Ryan, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me.
And thank you, Mike. I appreciate you.
100%, dude. I've been looking forward to this. For people that don't know you and your story, give us a spark notes. Who you are, where you coming from, what are you doing now?
Yeah, so I like to think of myself as grateful. That's first and foremost, because there was definitely a time in my life when I was selfish and self-centered, and I felt like the world was against me and the world owed me everything. And so I grew up in South Florida. I'm a South Florida native, third generation Florida native, which is rare down here. There's a lot of Northerners that are coming down here, like yourself from New York.
Yeah.
Uh, but I had very loving parents. They did the best that they could with what they had. But when my sister passed away, it destroyed my family. My mother turned to drugs. My father turned to alcohol. So not only did I feel like I lost my sister, but I also felt like I lost my parents because they were doing the best that they could with what they had. And so I felt like I just kept getting passed around to all my grandparents. And so I just never felt like I ever measured up, or I ever felt like I was important to them, or they loved me. And so although that was some very trying times for me, I know that's like the substance and the core of how I've been able to use that to become the entrepreneur that I am today and to become the leader that I am today. And so I own and operate drug and alcohol rehab centers. We have 9 programs in 5 states. I have about 500 employees. This year, we're going to do about 120 million in revenue, and we're going to impact about 10,000 lives. And so that's like what's most important for me, right? Is like the impact that I'm creating on this earth today. And it's something I never thought was ever imaginable, that I would be able to be
Yeah.
in a position to influence that many people's lives.
Dude, that's crazy. You said 10,000 lives this year?
Yeah, man. We do about 350 to 400 admissions a month. And so
Wow.
and then you figure we work with the siblings, and we also work with the family as well. So as a collective, we're impacting about 10,000 lives a year.
Wow. Dude, that's so cool. And I want to dig into like how you got there, but I want to acknowledge that first because like you could build businesses in any industry, but like that is so cool. Like that's a really cool piece of impact. Where I grew up, about an hour north of New York City, like East Coast got hit pretty heavily by the opioid epidemic. And let's just say that addiction wasn't a very uncommon thing where I grew up. And it's very necessary work that you're doing. I had a lot of people that I was close with go in and out of institutions like that and get help that they very much needed. So thank you for doing that work.
Thank you, bro.
100%. So how old are you when you lost your sister?
I was 5.
Oh, wow. So really early on.
Yeah, so it was right after my 5th birthday. And so, the development of a brain is between the ages of 0 to 7. And so a lot of the beliefs that were installed in my mind at that time was during that. And
Mhm.
so it was devastating, and I didn't really know the impact that had on me until later on in life. Like I turned to addiction by age 11. And so a lot of
Oh,
those emotions and feelings that I was going through, I was masking them with substances, and it was acceptable in my family, right? My mom was using, she was an active user. And so she would introduce different drugs to and these different behaviors. And so it was a part of my life that I thought was normal. And October 8th, 2001, I'm at a scene of a crime. We flipped the vehicle. I was pronounced dead. And at this point, I've spent 2 years in juvenile detention facilities, and I was looking at 25 years to life. And so that was like the first time in my life where I just felt like completely powerless. And I was just like, there's no way I'm getting out of this. Like my life is over. And to be honest with you, up until that point, it was like a blur. Like I didn't even know how I got there, and it was so cool, because I say that now, it's so cool. At the time, it was not so cool,
yeah.
but it was so powerful for me, because that was the first time that I had an opportunity to really believe in something bigger than me, because that was the only way that I was going to get out of there. There was no way that I could have got out of there on my own means. And
Yeah.
so it is when I really started to establish a relationship with my higher power, and who I call God. And it's been a blessing ever since that day.
Wow. Dude, pronounced dead on the scene. Is that because the wreck was just so bad and they just pronounced it, or because like vitals were gone? Like, what did that actually mean?
Yeah, so vitals were gone. I was unresponsive, and so I was using. I was up all weekend partying and using. So I'm sure it was a little bit of like an overdose, and it was a severe accident. So
Wow.
when they got to me, I was unresponsive. So they immediately called the trauma hawk, and I was trauma hawked to the hospital. And so
Wow.
yeah, it took me like, I don't know, maybe a day or so before I woke up, and I remembered like being handcuffed to the bed, and I was like, oh man, my life's over. Because I knew they said if you come back into juvie, we're going to send you away to a level 10 program, which I would have stayed my juvenile years in a max juvenile prison, and then they would have sent me to state prison with the amount of charges that they would have adjudicated me as an adult. And so it was just a devastating time for me.
How'd you get out of it? Did you do 25 years?
No, bro, I did not. Dude, that's when I feel like, a higher being stepped in. I remember like it was yesterday. I was in the cafeteria, and the pastor came up to me, and she was like, "Do you believe in God?" And I was like, I don't know what that has anything to do with, what I'm doing here. And she's
Yeah.
like, because at this point, like, you're with juvenile kids that are absolutely out of their mind. And so like there's this like demeanor that you have to like hold, like I'm a tough guy, and I'm trying to be like tough and stuff. And she's like, well, believe that I believe that there's something greater than you that can help you get out of this. And I don't know why she chose to come up to me and talk to me, but then she was like, and I was like, yeah, but there's no way I'm getting out of this. Like, it's very clear. Like, if I came back with any more charges, they were going to give me full sentencing. I've already done 2 years. Like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Like my life's over. And she's like, believe that I believe. And she's like, if you adopt the belief that I believe, then he'll start to work in your life. And on the day of sentencing, they gave me another chance. So I really don't know. It was beyond my control on how I didn't go to jail for the 25 to life.
Wow. Believe that I believe. That's a cool play on words. Um, it's so interesting. Like that's relevant to pretty much any level of growth and development, right? It's like sometimes you have to adopt someone else's belief in you because we can't see it yet. And it sounds like this was just a really pivotal time that you had to experience the exact same thing.
For sure. I mean, proximity is everything, right? It's like the human mind wants to find evidence to support its belief system. So if you don't have the evidence that you can do it, it's necessary to see somebody else that can do it. And that's what modeling is all about, right? It's like you can, if I'm seeing you, Mike, like, oh, I see you swinging the golf club and hitting the golf ball, then okay, now I know I have evidence that it is possible. And then
Yeah.
it's a matter of just getting in the reps. It's a matter of me picking up that club and swinging it as many times as I possibly can until I get to the point where I'm mastering it. They say 10,000 hours before you're a master at something. And so absolutely, it's vital to adopt other people's beliefs and model other people's behaviors and habits.
Yeah. Um, so you get off, you get one more chance. What happens between then and running a nine-figure company? I'm sure there's a decent gap there. Like paint that picture for me.
Yeah, sure. So I would say there's like there's like 2 decades of like of my life journey. So like the first decade, the first 5 years were all about recovery, giving back, making a difference. I got sober at 16. My mom and my stepfather were both a big part of my sobriety at the time. And so I was like high on recovery. I was like the poster child for AA, knew everybody, was like helping all the young kids. Like nobody in my town got sober at that young, like had the story that I had. So I felt like for the first time, like everybody really like accepted me and wanted me. And it was feeding those needs that I didn't get as a child. So I was thriving. I was high in life. 2006, my mother relapsed. My biological father was diagnosed with cancer, and they told him he had a year to live. And so all of those beliefs of abandonment, not being important, not being good enough, all came back. And
Mm,
then I quickly turned to greed and ego and arrogance. And I started doing commodities. And so from 2007 to 2012, I became a commodity broker, had, a call center with 50 guys on the phone, making a ton of money, arrogant asshole, just completely removing one addiction to the other.
Yep.
I was engaged, and April 2012, that all came to a screeching halt when I got sued by the Federal Trade Commission for $10 million. Yeah, man. And so
Whoa.
that was like another big punch in the jaw. And the part that was crazy about it was like, I'm sitting there being sued, and it felt like when I was 16 in jail, like, how did I get here? Like, how did I get here again? Like, I know better, like, what happened to me? And there's these unconscious patterns,
Yeah.
and like, if you don't address those traumas or those unconscious patterns, you're just going to continue to replicate what you're doing on a daily basis. And so that was necessary for me, because it slowed me down enough to start to see like what's going on. I come home from being sued, and my fiance is like, I'm out. I'm leaving you. I'm not doing this anymore.
Same
So,
day.
I mean, within weeks, it
Yeah.
was, yeah, it
I was
was
gonna
just,
say that'd be crazy.
no, the timing wasn't the same day. I mean, I probably would have preferred it, because it was just like,
Get it
I'm
over
like,
with.
I'm like low. I'm at the lowest point, like dragging ass. And then finally, like 2 weeks later, she's like, dude, I'm out. Like, you're a loser. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so
Life,
that was the start of the new chapter of my life.
dude, that's so interesting. Life has a life has a funny way of like forcing you to learn a lesson. And if you don't learn it, you will continue to be peppered until you do. Or maybe pummeled is a better word in some cases. Um, whatever happened, like, did that lawsuit just tank that company? And that's when you pivoted out? Like, what happened with the commodities brokerage?
Yeah, so I was suspended for aggressive sales practices, and then I pivoted simultaneously. I started selling like physical bullion on leverage contracts, and that's actually what I was sued for. And I had a good law firm, and a lot of the accusations that they made on me, I was able to prove that, they said I wasn't like buying the bullion. They said I was doing fraudulent sales, and that wasn't accurate. I was able to prove that I was. And so there was a original preliminary injunction, which would determine if I was going to have all my assets frozen, and I was going to be fined the $10 million, and I would lose everything. I was able to prove that I was purchasing the bullion. I was able to prove like what I was doing wasn't illegal. But at the same time, I knew that morally and ethically, I wasn't putting people in the best situation that they should be in. It's funny. I was sitting at I was literally like within weeks of being sued, I was at a breakfast with a friend of mine, and I was like, we were talking, and I don't know how the subject came up, and he's like, dude, he's like, you're a great salesman, man. He's like, you could do so many things. And I was like being arrogant. He's like, I'm the best salesman. I can sell ice to an Eskimo. And he paused and he said, Ryan, that's the problem. And I was like, what do you mean? He says, you're selling something to somebody that they don't need. You're selling something to somebody that isn't benefiting them. Eskimos have plenty of ice. And he said, as soon as you start selling something to somebody that they need that can benefit their lives, your whole world will change. And I was just like, whoa. Here I am 11 years later, remembering as if I'm sitting there right now. And then he says, hey, by the way, do you want to go to this program called Onsite? It's in Nashville, Tennessee. They do inner child experiential therapy, psychodrama, and they really highlight and identify where all these unconscious patterns come from. And so I agreed to go, and being in that program is what gave me the leverage to see that like I have so much work that needs to be done. Like going through the childhood that I went through, if I don't focus on that and I don't work on that, I'm going to find myself in a very similar situation. And so I've obsessed over the last 10 years. I've done probably over 120 events as an attendee. I've probably facilitated about 50 events at this point. I'm probably knocking on the door at 9,000-10,000 hours of this type of work. And I believe that's the core of how I've been able to develop and build an organization at the capacity that I have today, because I show up every day as a servant. I show up every day to lead at the highest level. And so for that, I'm just extremely grateful.
Yeah, dude, that's so awesome. It's like, it sounds like you did a lot of work to really, I don't know if limiting beliefs is the right word, if that lands, or if it's just glass ceilings that were imposed based on some of these early childhood trauma beliefs, whatever it may be. But like, it sounds like you did a whole lot of work to just completely obliterate those. And then between that and the alignment with a mission that you were really passionate about, something selling something that you were actually passionate about that people needed, it was like the rocket fuel for you.
100%. And the thing is like sales has a bad condensation, but the truth is like everybody, as soon as they open their mouth, they're selling in some way or another. Everybody is selling. I'm selling right now. You and Mike, you're selling me. And like anybody that's listening, like we want to impact them. We want to sell them on maybe there's a new way. Maybe if you do some work on yourself, you'll start to see things from a different perspective.
Yeah.
And it was so many of the things that you're talking about, limiting beliefs and, not forgiving and blaming, not taking responsibility. I was such a victim. I had such a victim mindset, and I felt like everybody owed something to me because I felt like I never got what I deserved. That's what I was carrying around for so long. And I used to think like life happened to me. And then I started to see like, okay, because you can ask yourself a different question, right? Your mind is a problem solving mechanism. And so if you ask yourself a question, your mind will find the answer. And so I started asking myself, like, what was the gift in all of those challenging times? Like, what were the benefits that have come from all those trying times? And I can trace back and tell you specific moments and specific times how that's impacted me today and why I'm in the position that I'm in today.
Mm. Yeah, it's so fun, like using metaphors to just poke fun at like really challenging times in life. But like, the only people always want to say, like, I either win or I learn, right? And I think it's true. And it's odd that the word lesson starts with the letter L, but like there's always a lesson. And the only way it's a true loss is if you ignore the lesson. And then life will continue to pummel that lesson into you until we wise up and we learn, right? I'm fairly hard headed. So like takes
Yeah,
me a little bit sometimes, you know?
you owe me
Um,
good.
when you did start to, embrace some of these lessons, you pivot, you find this new product to sell, and you get into the rehabilitation space, like, what did some of the early, because obviously now, dude, 300 to 400 app or onboardings a month, like 120 in rev, like that's insane. And that's like the level that many businesses can't even fathom, of getting to like 50% of that. What did the early years of that business look like? And how much do you think the fact that this is actually two completely different questions, but I'll ask it and then we'll come back to it just so we don't forget. How much do you think that there was such a personal attachment and belief in the product? How much did that fuel and essentially guarantee your success?
I think it had everything to do with it, right? And it's like, you see a lot of these coaches and a lot of like leaders talk about like, what's your why, what's your purpose? You're waking up every day serving your purpose and your life's mission. And so for me, because drugs and alcohol completely destroyed my family, I felt like it was my mission. It was my fiduciary responsibility, because I was granted another chance at life, and I feel, and I learned along the way, like you can't keep what you have unless you give it away. And so for me, it was like, how cool is it that I actually get to impact people's lives, help people in their sobriety, help people with their mental health illnesses, and get paid for it? I was like, this is the best thing ever. And so I think it's everything, right? Like if you're waking up every day looking to serve at the highest level, and you're making the best decisions for everybody else around you, then you're in alignment with your purpose, right? But that transition took some time, because I used to always think about myself, or what's in the best interest of Ryan, or how is this going to benefit me? And as soon as I started thinking about how can I serve and meet everybody else's needs, that's when that transition started to happen for me.
Yeah, that's so cool. So talk to me about the early like transition into this industry. Like how did you start? I mean, obviously it sounded like you were making a bunch of money, so you could probably like fund opening a facility. Like how'd you get introduced to this idea? Who pointed you in the right direction? Like what did that look like?
Yeah. So when I went to onsite, a part of their program is like, what's your dream, and how can you, go after that dream? So I remembered when I first got sober, I used to hang out with a lot of guys at the halfway houses. And so like it's a sober living environment where guys are transitioning from like treatment into like real society. And I was like, wow, I want to be in this industry. And so I knew a couple people that worked in the industry. And so I knew sales and marketing. And so I just started calling around asking if there was any programs that wanted to partner. And so I found a gentleman that was really struggling with the marketing and sales aspect. And so at this point, through all the legal battles and everything that I had to go through with the FTC, I spent all my money. So I borrowed money from my father. He put up the initial investment. And we made a deal. If I become a success in this business and I pay back his money, eventually he'll give me equity. And so, we were a thriving success out the gate because I knew everybody in the industry. I had a reputation. I've been sober a long time. Although I was sued by the FTC, I still had a lot of great friends and relationships. So I was able to be successful at the business. And then we just grew and scaled. We just kept growing and scaling from there.
So you partnered and you brought your skill set to an industry that and found a business that was struggling with the skill set, partnered with them, and then just scaled out that partnership.
Yeah. And so we ended up buying out the original partner. And then I started to, raising capital was, what I did. And so I found some investors, brought them to the table. They loved the business. They loved the mission. And so then we just continued to scale the business. And my real growth started when I met Tony Robbins, August 2018. I had bits and pieces of like, of like leadership skills and my ability to scale. But when I met Tony, August 2018, my business was doing 10 million a year in revenue. Fast forward, 3.5, 4 years, I 10x that. And so I've adopted a lot of his skills and a lot of his trainings. We've integrated all of that into our business structure, which is wild, dude. And like the key of our success was like me getting out of my own way. Like I was the chokehold. The leader's the chokehold in
Always.
anything. Yeah, dude. So like I just had to step back and like bring people in that were more talented than me. And then once I got to see them come in, I was like, wait a minute, I'm not as bad as I thought I was, because now I see the expert, and then I adopt those behaviors and I learn, and then I just continue to elevate my game. But the key piece here is the hunger, is the desire to want to be better. Every single day that I wake up, I am obsessed with like, how can I improve the quality of my life? How can I improve how people experience me? How can I improve how I influence others? How can I improve how I make impact in the world? And if you have that obsession, then you're just going to naturally just improve, and you're going to start to see things that you never thought were possible. And that's been my experience. And I literally can't even believe it. It's crazy. Like when I tell you what we're doing, it doesn't even make sense to me. It's hard for me to even like comprehend it sometimes.
Dude, that's the best. It's so funny. We're always the bottleneck.
Yeah.
Always. Um, was that easy for you to learn?
No, because at first, I was very resistant, because I one, growing up where I felt like I was all alone, I always felt like I had to figure it out by myself. So I never really asked for help. I would always try to
Yeah.
figure it out myself. And so when somebody's telling you like, hey, Ryan, like you're the reasons why this isn't working, it was a hard pill to swallow, because in my mind, I'm the best, right? Like I'm like, I could do it better than you.
Yeah.
But that resistance was what was causing the friction throughout the organization. I wasn't giving people enough room to learn from their own mistakes, and I wasn't giving people enough room to like feel good about what they're doing and have ownership. And so I just needed to like shift my perception, right? Like just because I'm taking a step back doesn't mean I'm like losing, or it doesn't mean that like I'm not making the best decision for the organization. And so like taking a step back for me, it's like recovery. They say like surrendering is the answer to success. And like the idea of surrendering is not like, if you're in battle, like surrendering means you lost. Well, that actually is how you win in business and in sobriety. Is you have to surrender that you may not have all the answers. And as soon as you accept that and you open your mind to thinking that there may be another way, you're just being receptive to learning. And so now it's like I always remain teachable, because as soon as I think that I know the answer, I'm closing off the idea that I could learn something. And so as soon as
Yeah.
I go to like, hey, you know what, I surrender, maybe I don't have all the answers. Now my inquisitive side is starting to ask questions, and I'm also now looking for other answers rather than just keeping myself in a box.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like it's I also find it's a way more peaceful way to go about it. Like I think back on like a lot of big pivots that I've had to make in the business, and like lessons that I didn't learn, and like then questioning what I actually wanted and all of these things. And it's so easy to get so worked up and beat the shit out of yourself mentally, and like just talk down to yourself and insert da 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 da, da, like none of it matters. It's like there is no left, there is no right or wrong. There's just left or right, as one of my friends always says. It just is. Right. So what's the lesson in it? Surrender to it, make the best decision on what you want to do moving forward, and then lean into that. But there's no point working yourself up and being like, this is going to suck. No, it just is. And I think that word surrender explains that perfectly. Um, August 2018, how did you end up in at it? Like, was it a Tony event? Like, how'd you end up in that world?
Sure. So it was a business mastery event,
Yeah.
and the fiance that I had at the time, she went to a UPW seminar and she enrolled me into the business mastery program. And so that was my initial introduction, was because of my ex fiance.
Oh, wow. Business Master is the only one I haven't done.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So Tony, that was the first big investment I ever made in myself. I went to UPW, frankly, because I like it was a bucket list thing. Like speaking's a big vertical for our business. And I was like, man, I viewed Tony as one of the best speakers of all time. Sure as hell that is alive right now. I'm like, I want to experience this. So it was like buy one, get one. And I was like, well, I could definitely sell this to someone in my network. And then I get to go for only like $800. This is great. I did that. And then they pitched Mastery University. And I was 27 years old at the time. And I was nowhere near goals that I had set for 25. And I was just in a really dark place, like just very unhappy and in a rut. And I didn't even know what the hell you got with Mastery University, nor did I know I'd never dropped 10 G's on myself before ever, but I was like, whoever's going to spend that kind of money, like that's the room I want to be in. I'll somehow figure it out. Fast forward like a year and no, actually just a year. And I came back from Life and Wealth Mastery at Fiji, and I gave my notice at work 6 days later. And it was 6 weeks notice because we had a big project in play, and I liked my team, so I didn't want to leave them hanging.
All right.
Um, but yeah, dude, it's crazy. So Business Master, I'm sure I'll go to eventually, but I've always heard amazing things. I could just never make it work, timing wise, but only a matter of time. What were some of the I know that you're still pretty heavily involved in that network nowadays, yeah?
Yeah, so I actually joined his inner circle. They call it the Lions. So I've been a Lion for 3 years now. So we've, once a year you get to go to Tony's house for the weekend, and you're in proximity of him, and you're with like a smaller group, intimate setting, like 35 to 40 people, and
Oh wow.
you just jam out, man. It's unbelievable, and really challenge yourself, and people are challenging each other, and you're networking, and there's just it's a beautiful environment, man. I'm so blessed to have had the opportunity to be around one of the greats, because I also echo what you said about him. He is one of the best speakers that I've ever seen,
Yeah.
and it's like, he creates this lasting change, and like bro, today, like these metaphors are like inserted in my mind. Like as soon as I like I'm having like a down day, or I have low energy, I'll have in my head, I'll have his voice. if you're not growing, you're dying. It's like, all right, Tony, I'm gonna get out of bed. Like,
Yeah.
it's like repetition
So
is the
funny.
mother of skill. It's like all these little things that I just like have been inserted in my head that propel me forward. When I get stuck, it's like I have these moments. It's something you said I want to highlight. You talked about like you being at your lowest point and you made a decision to invest in yourself, and because of that decision, you are the version of yourself today. I'm sure that was probably the starting point.
Yeah.
And Tony even says like, in the moments of decisions will truly shape your destiny. And that was my experience. I'm sitting at Tony's and I'm learning all this information about business and like culture and being a leader. And Tony said something because, I had this dark cloud over my head. I just got sued by the FTC, a few years ago. I'm doing the best to like rebuild my reputation. I have so much shame and guilt over the things that I did. And I remember Tony saying like, you have to do the work. Like you can't skip it. You can't skip the suck. You have to dig in. You have to
Yeah.
go through that grind. And I remember him saying, he's like, you have to be so great that they can't deny you. And I was like, all right, that's my mission. And he was pitching Platinum Partners. And I was like, how the hell am I going to come up with 85K? I had no
Yeah.
idea. I just did it. And I was like, I'm going to find a way. And that decision has me here today, dude, with an organization that's going to do $120 million a year in revenue. And it blows my mind. And we're impacting 10,000 lives. And I know that decision that day I made to invest in myself was what brought me to here to here to this present moment.
Dude, I love it. I love it. That's the best part about all of this, right? Let me ask you this, and then we'll start to wrap up because I want to be respectful of your time.
Appreciate that.
You have invested more in yourself than 99.99% of people. In some of the most prestigious masterminds that you could even come across in the business world. What is the lesson that you've learned in that process that was the most surprising to you and you did not expect to learn?
Yeah, it's interesting. For so long, I'm a seventh grade dropout. I didn't go to college. I don't have much experience in business whatsoever. And one of the biggest ahas that I had was I always thought resources were the key to success. Having time, having money, having technology, having contacts, having the experience. I thought that was what I needed to be successful. But once I learned that resourcefulness is the key to success, and a lot of the stuff that Tony taught me, I was already implementing. I lived it. Getting to a place where it's like, it's all or nothing. You have to find a way. Creating passion, creating leverage to push through fear. Those resourceful emotions are the very key to the success that I have today, because it's like, okay, a problem shows up in my business. I feel this emotion of fear, but then all of a sudden I look back and I was like, okay, when I was 9 years old, my mom was shot by my stepdad and I thought I was going to lose her. And I didn't know how to get out of this. I didn't know what to do. I had the survival mentality. So perseverance is what pushed me through. And so
Yeah.
it's like, you have these moments that you can look back and like, being resourceful is the key to success. It has nothing to do with the plaques on the wall or the technology or the money. And so, because you find a way. And so that was like one of the biggest ahas, because when I was at Business Mastery, Tony had everybody stand up, and there's like 2,500 people in the room, and you sit down based on your annual revenue. And I was one of 7 people still standing, having done $10 million a year in gross revenue. And I was 0.00006% of the world. And so once I realized that my resourcefulness got me there, not my resources, I was like, holy shit, like I can do this. And that
Yeah.
was the belief that I needed to continue to where I'm at today.
I love it. I love it. Um, Ryan, where do you hang out most on social? Where can people follow along the journey? Check out what you're doing. Plug away, my friend.
Yeah, so I would say Instagram, ryan.zofay, Zofay. And we put all of our promotional stuff there. We any of our personal development seminars or any podcasts or anything, we promote it there. That'd be the best way. If anybody needs, any help or anything like that, or needs some feedback or some guidance, you could DM me. I'll respond, or my team will respond. And I just wrote a book, and it's my monologue. I should be publishing it here in the next 30 days or so. So you'll be able to get that information from my Instagram as well.
Boom. Guys, that'll be linked up in the show notes. Get connected, show some love, all that fun stuff. Ryan, last question I have for you. Going all the way back, losing your sister at 5. Family taking the turns that they've taken, your experience with addiction, in and out of juvie, having that car crash, being pronounced dead at the scene, coming back, getting that next chance, finding your relationship with that higher power for you, right? And putting in the work, your experience selling the commodities, leading to the lawsuit, all the lessons learned there, making the pivots, learning that maybe we shouldn't sell ice to Eskimos, right? And then getting into, this new opportunity, bringing your sales and marketing experience into the rehabilitation world, and just absolutely exploding that, buying out your partner, leading you to this Tony event in 2018, and just skyrocketing from there, right? Doing 120 million in rev this year, over 10,000 people served this year, like ridiculous numbers that are absolutely incredible. This entire window. What's been the biggest lesson that you've learned that has yielded the most results and had the biggest impact on your life and in your business?
I would say just remaining grateful. Like every single day we wake up, our mind is programmed to find what's wrong in every situation. And so when you're focusing on what's wrong, you're going to have these disempowering emotions. And if you're grateful for the life that you're living, those are going to be the antidote to those disempowering emotions. And so being selfless is the key, right? It's like, what is leadership? My belief around leadership is, you're a servant. And what I ultimately mean by that is, in every man and woman, there's the archetype of a hero. Everybody wants to be a hero, and hero in its Latin roots mean servo. Servo means servant, and it really means slave. And so once I learned that my mission here on earth is to serve every single person that comes in my contact, my life would be much better for that. And that's been my experience, man. That's literally how I wake up every single day. And the life that I'm currently living is, how can I serve? How can I impact others? How can I make a difference? And as long as I come from that place, I always remain grateful. And I'm living my best life, man. Like nothing else really matters. You could take it all away, and I'm like, hey, it's great. Like I'm grateful that I get to do this.
I love it. Ryan, thanks for joining me, brother. I really enjoyed this.
I appreciate you, Mike. Thank you.
100%.